It was another ordinary day on a bustling city sidewalk. The streets were alive with the constant shuffle of hurried footsteps, car horns, and the distant hum of conversations. Among the crowd, a man strolled unnoticed, just another face passing by. But as he neared a small art stand set up along the sidewalk, something made him pause. Few people gave the stand more than a passing glance. The colorful paintings were displayed neatly, each telling a different story. The artist, a young woman, sat quietly behind the table, her eyes hopeful but tired. The man stopped, his interest piqued by the striking brushstrokes on one canvas. He bent down slightly, examining the art, while the young artist hesitantly smiled at him. The man wasn't just anyone. He was Michael Stanton, a renowned actor and director. But here, in this moment, he wasn't a celebrity, just a stranger drawn to something beautiful. The artist, Claire Reynolds, was far from an ordinary street painter. She wasn't there simply to sell art for passion or profit. Claire was in the middle of the fight of her life, battling a rare form of cancer. Her paintings weren't just her creative expression, they were her lifeline. Claire's story, a battle beyond the canvas. Claire's journey had taken a cruel twist months before, inside a sterile hospital room filled with the smell of disinfectants and the low hum of medical machines. She sat on a stiff hospital bed, gripping the sheets tightly as Dr. Patel, her oncologist, delivered the news. "The treatment is working," he said gently, "but we need to continue with more chemotherapy sessions." Claire's heart sank. She glanced at her mother, sitting beside her, trying and failing to hold back tears. Their family savings were gone, consumed by endless medical bills. Without insurance, every additional round of treatment felt like an impossible mountain to climb. That night, Claire lay awake, the weight of her illness and her family's growing debt pressing heavily on her chest. Her mind raced with thoughts of how she could help ease the burden. Then, an idea flickered: her art. It had always been her escape, her passion. Maybe, just maybe, it could be her salvation too. By morning, she had made up her mind, bringing art to life on the streets. Claire and her mother set up a simple art stand on a busy street corner. Her mother helped arrange the paintings: vibrant landscapes, soulful portraits, and abstract expressions of emotion. A small sign read, "Art for sale, help fund cancer treatment." At first, people barely noticed. Some walked by with hurried steps, others spared only a brief glance. A woman in a sleek blazer hovered by the table, admired a painting, then left without buying. A businessman in an expensive suit read Claire's sign, but walked away with a shake of his head. Claire felt the sting of rejection, but refused to give in. Her determination burned stronger than ever. On the second day, an elderly couple stopped and bought a painting, a simple watercolor of sunflower field, for $80. It wasn't much, but it gave Claire hope. For the next few days, she sat under the hot sun, her body tired from treatment, but her spirit unbroken. She managed to sell 2 more paintings, but exhaustion gnawed at her. By the 4th day, Claire was drained. Her energy was fading fast, and with it, her optimism. But then, a young journalist named Emily Green noticed the stand. She asked Claire about her story and took a few photos for her popular local art blog. The next morning, everything changed. The power of a story. Emily's blog post about Claire's struggle and her dream to fund her own treatment through art spread quickly online. Readers were touched by the courage of a young artist fighting for her life. Shares, comments, and messages of support poured in. More people stopped by Claire's stand, eager to buy her paintings. But the moment that would change everything came unexpectedly. On a warm afternoon, as Claire was rearranging her canvases, a tall man in a weathered cowboy hat approached. He studied her paintings carefully, his eyes lingering on a black and white piece, a hauntingly beautiful desert scene with a lone cowboy standing against a sweeping sky. "I love the depth in this one," he remarked, his voice calm and steady. Claire smiled softly. "It's one of my favorites." The man looked at her, then at the small sign about her cancer treatment. "You're quite the fighter," he said. Claire nodded, sharing her story, her diagnosis, the struggle with medical bills, and why she had turned to her art. That was when he revealed his identity. "I'm Michael Stanton," he said, extending his hand. Claire blinked in disbelief. She had grown up watching his films. Without another word, Michael pulled out his checkbook and scribbled something down. He handed the check to Claire, who initially thought he was paying for the painting. But when she saw the number, her breath caught in her throat. $50,000. Her hands trembled. I can't accept this. I was only asking $200. Michael smiled gently. This isn't charity. It's payment for a great piece of art, and maybe a little something to help you keep painting. The ripple effect. The scene drew attention. People recognized Michael Stanton, and soon a crowd had gathered, snapping photos and recording videos. Claire's story exploded across social media, reaching news outlets and gaining international attention. People from all over wanted to buy her paintings. Her inbox flooded with messages of support, and her art stand became a sensation. A month later, Claire completed her final round of chemotherapy. Every bill had been paid. She stood healthier, stronger, and more inspired than ever. But the story didn't end there. Claire received a handwritten letter from Michael Stanton. "Dear Claire, your art carries more than just color and lines. It carries your heart. Keep telling your story. The world needs it." Michael. With the newfound attention, Claire was able to open her first gallery show. Her paintings hung proudly on the walls, each piece telling a part of her journey. The black and white desert painting, the one that had started it all, now had a permanent home in Michael Stanton's private collection. It served as a reminder that sometimes the most profound changes in life come from simple acts of kindness. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and leave a comment below telling us where you're watching from. And remember, kindness can change lives in ways you never expect. Quarto. You said, "Viết thành một câu chuyện hay đi nào, tôi không muốn ngắt quãng." ChatGPT said, "A stroke of kindness, how one painting changed a life." It was another restless day on the city's busy sidewalks. The sun hung high above the towering buildings, casting long shadows over the streams of people rushing past. Office workers with briefcases, tourists snapping photos, street vendors calling out their deals. In the midst of the noise and the movement, a small, barely noticeable art stand sat quietly along the curb. People passed it by without a second glance, too caught up in their own lives to notice the collection of colorful canvases propped on simple wooden easels. Claire Reynolds sat behind the stand, her hands resting on her lap, a tired but hopeful smile stretching across her pale face. Her eyes followed the passers-by. Some glanced at her sign that read, "Art for Sale, Help Fund Cancer Treatment," but quickly turned away, too uncomfortable or too busy to stop. Her fingers fidgeted with a paint-stained bracelet on her wrist. The summer heat was relentless, and her thin scarf did little to hide the signs of chemotherapy, the subtle hollowness in her cheeks, the fragile thinness of her frame. But Claire wasn't there to be pitied. She was there to fight, and her art was her only weapon. For hours, she sat under the scorching sun, watching hundreds of people walk by, her heart sinking a little more with each pair of eyes that ignored her. On the first day, she sold nothing. On the second, a kind, elderly couple stopped, drawn to a delicate watercolor of sunflowers swaying in the breeze. They bought it for $80, giving her more than she asked. It wasn't much, but it was something, enough to keep going. By the fourth day, Claire was running on empty. Her body was exhausted from treatment, the heat, and the emotional weight of rejection. She had only sold 3 paintings, barely a dent in the mountain of medical bills waiting at home. Her mother, who had helped her set up the stand each morning, insisted she rest, but Claire was stubborn. She needed to do this for her family, for herself. As she rearranged the canvases on the table, a shadow loomed over her. A tall man, wearing a worn cowboy hat and a denim jacket, stopped in front of her stand. His face was rugged, framed by silver-streaked hair, and though he wore sunglasses, Claire could feel his eyes studying the paintings intently. "Nice work," he said, his voice low and warm. Claire looked up, surprised that someone had stopped. "Thank you," she replied, her voice soft but steady. The man's gaze lingered on a black and white painting, a desert scene, vast and empty, with a lone cowboy silhouetted against the horizon. It was one of Claire's favorites. She had painted it during one of her longest nights in the hospital, thinking about isolation, strength, and survival. "This one's special," he murmured, tapping the canvas gently. "It is," Claire admitted. "I painted it when things weren't so easy." He turned toward her, lifting his sunglasses. His face was familiar now, unmistakable. Michael Stanton, the legendary actor and director known for his westerns. Claire's heart skipped a beat. She had grown up watching his films, never imagining she'd meet him like this. But Michael didn't act like a celebrity. He didn't talk about himself or make a scene. Instead, he asked about her battle with cancer, her art, her life. Claire hesitated at first, but then found herself telling him everything. The diagnosis, the endless medical bills, the reason she had set up the stand. She didn't dramatize it or ask for sympathy. She simply spoke her truth. Michael listened carefully, then without saying much, he reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his checkbook. Claire's eyebrows knitted in confusion as she watched him scribble something down. He tore the check from the pad and handed it to her. She blinked, thinking it was a generous tip for the painting. But when she looked at the number, her breath caught in her throat. $50,000. Her hand shook as she held the check. I can't take this," she stammered. "I only asked for $200. Michael chuckled softly. "I'm not giving you charity. I'm buying this painting because it speaks to me. And the rest, well, think of it as an investment in your future." Tears welled in Claire's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away, overwhelmed by the kindness from a man who owed her nothing. Word spread fast. Someone in the growing crowd had recognized Michael, and within minutes, photos and videos of the moment hit social media. People swarmed her stand, eager to buy her remaining paintings. News outlets picked up the story. Famed actor buys painting, helps cancer patient raise thousands. And Claire's phone buzzed endlessly with messages from strangers offering to buy her art or donate to her treatment. In a single afternoon, her life had changed. A month later, Claire sat in the hospital again, but this time, it wasn't with fear or dread. It was her final chemotherapy session. The bills were paid. The stress that had shadowed her family for months was finally lifted. She held a letter in her lap, its edges worn from being read over and over again. "Claire, you've got real talent and guts. Don't stop creating. Keep telling your story through your art. The world needs more of it." Michael Stanton. The black and white desert painting that had sparked it all now hung in Michael's private collection, framed and displayed in his California home. But for Claire, the real masterpiece was the new chapter of life she now had the chance to create, one brushstroke at a time. And it all began with a single moment of unexpected kindness.